Steelers Nation, welcome to another episode of the Steeler Culture Podcast, where we break down Pittsburgh Steelers football. And today we got a special guest joining us. Huge shout out to Steel Sentinel, aka Philly G, the host of the Black and Bold podcast on the Steel Curtain Network. Episodes every Saturday on any podcast platform that you guys are listening to your podcast on. Huge shout out to Philly G. Glad to have him on for another year during the mock draft season to discuss the Steelers draft process and their biggest needs. And of course, have a little live mock draft later on in this episode. Philly G, welcome back to the channel, man. Always great to have you on.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Can y'all believe this is year number 6 we're doing this? Are we getting old?
Hey, 6 years, 6 rings, huh?
Oh, hey, let's make it 7. Let's make it 7. But no, it's great to be back. I love and look forward to this every single year. Anybody that knows me and hears me on the podcast knows that this is one of my favorite times of year for the team. So excited to talk about more draft stuff and hear what y'all have to think and what you have to say.
Yeah, man. I just love splitting discussions, talking about the draft, just kind of, thinking out the box of what the Steelers could do, what they need, the player prospects, the whole everything about the draft process is just so fun. So to bring him on for another year is going to be another exciting discussion. So yeah, in this episode, we will be discussing, of course, the biggest draft needs that the Steelers have at the moment, which are, as you guys could probably already tell, but we'll discuss some of the bigger ones, maybe even some you guys aren't even thinking of in this podcast. And of course, we're going to do a quick outlook on free agency to start that because this is where we are. So in free agency, I don't know how you feel about free agency, Philly G, but they brought in Darius Slay to fill in corner for the year. They made a big trade for DK Metcalf, and the bulk of it has been pretty much filling in a lot of depth pieces for corner, running back, safety, positions like that. So what is your real outlook on free agency that we've seen the past couple weeks?
I know I'm not the first person to say this, and I definitely won't be the last, but there's something about this kind of like comp pick, theory that's going around that the Steelers have really just been picking up folks that have been getting cut in the hopes to garner some comp picks to maybe do something next year. Maybe. I don't know. It's kind of pie in the sky right now. But what I do know, or what at least I think from the free agency period thus far, is that you can definitely tell they're still in this win now mode, right? You don't go get DK, pay him that much money, bring in a legitimate, receiving weapon like that if you're in rebuild mode. Same goes with somebody like Darius Slay. Is he going to go ahead and hopefully, coach up Joey Porter Jr. and Corey Trice? Yeah, but they're also looking for someone who's a vet, knows what they're doing, just won a Super Bowl to come into the locker room and kind of maybe fix the communication in the secondary. I mean, same with Juan Thornhill. Browns fans will say that he was like the worst person ever. That's because they're Browns fans. I mean, we have pity for them over there in in Ohio. But yeah, I think overall they've done a very good job, like you'd mentioned, getting a lot of depth pieces. That means that you can clear up your draft. And if there's one thing that I've seen and that many Steelers insiders have kind of understood and seen, it's that Omar Khan likes to go into the draft with as many bases covered as possible so they don't feel desperate to have another Devin Bush scenario where you got to jump up 10 picks to grab a guy that probably shouldn't have been picked as early as he did, so that everything's ready to go for the draft. They can pick the best player available regardless of positions of need because everything's kind of covered.
Yeah, I agree. And that's kind of what Omar Khan did in free agency. And going back to what he said about the whole comp pick formula or the comp pick theory. Well, first of all, the Steelers are in line for some really interesting comp picks next year. There is a chance, I don't know how likely it is, but there's a chance next year that they could be sitting with four. Yes, I said four third round picks, one of their own, one coming from Dan Moore, unbelievably, another coming from Justin Fields, depending on how he performs for the Jets. And the same thing now for Russell Wilson. If he lives up to the contract incentives from the Giants, earning up to close to $21 million, they could get a third for Wilson as well. But, that's all, I want to say, living on a prayer right now. We'll see in a year's time where we stand. But what they're looking at right now is a third for Dan Moore, a fourth for Justin Fields, a fifth for Russell Wilson, and a sixth for James Daniels. So those are four big guys that got out and got some decent contracts. And the Steelers are going to be getting comp picks next year for said guys. And I got to say, for those guys, we're not really losing anything because they're already replaced. I mean, we don't know who the quarterback's going to be yet, and we'll get into that shortly. But James Daniels was replaced by Mason McCormick. Broderick Jones has already been replacing Dan Moore. It just took the Steelers 2 years to finally do it. So we're not losing anybody in free agency, and most of the guys that they have lost, they've replaced, and they're going to be getting said comp picks next year, which could be used for a quarterback, maybe. How do you feel about that?
Listen, I really like next year's quarterback room, draft class. Now, this is all hoping and pending that these, with NIL kind of reshaping the way college football happens, a lot of these guys could go back for another year, make a lot of money, maybe improve their tape. But there are going to be some guys like Drew Aller who are going to I mean, they're not going to go back to be a super senior. They're going to go into the draft. Arch Manning, if he has a full season where he looks really, really good, which shouldn't be that hard at Texas, they have an amazing defense, an amazing program. Probably will have a stellar year. Probably will be the number one draft pick overall because of the last name alone, let alone the what he's going to put on the field. And then there's some other interesting prospects. You have the gentleman from South Carolina who's kind of that dual threat quarterback. There's the gentleman from Tennessee. I'm not even going to try to pronounce his last name because it's really, really eccentric and has a lot of consonants, but I like next year's draft class. This year, depending on who you talk to, is lesser than. I think that there's a lot of quarterbacks in next year's draft class that are going to have really good seasons. Completely forgot about the kid from LSU. He's another one
Yep.
that could be very, very good next year. So I think that next year is going to be a little bit more promising if you're looking for a franchise guy. I still think the Steelers might look at a quarterback this year, especially if, depending on what they want to do with Aaron Rodgers, which we'll get into in a second, they might have to just for a camp body or just, the Steelers are never just going to roll over and tank. They're not that type of franchise. So they're going to draft somebody, I think, next year for sure, but they might even have to do one this year. So I'm all board getting the franchise guy in Pittsburgh, which I'll be there. It'll be awesome. I'll get to be in Pittsburgh for the draft and actually watch them draft their franchise guy. That'd be amazing.
Yeah, we'll be there as well. I mean, that's in a year's time, but I can't wait. I feel like the writing is on the wall. It's like the stars are aligned in the sky for that to happen. And I don't know how you feel about the quarterback position this year or the Steelers' approach at the quarterback position for this specific class. We've been saying all offseason that this 2025 needs to be the year where I'm not saying they have to tank or they need to completely suck. That's not what the Steelers do. That's not their formula, but they need to build the team around the quarterback position. They need to fulfill all these other needs, which they did so a little bit in free agency, and they still had the draft to do so. They need to fulfill such positions, and then hopefully, mostly everything is set that you can trade up and sacrifice as many picks for a quarterback next year, depending on where they're selecting, depending on who proves out big in the college season this upcoming year, which is going to be a very intense watch for, I'm sure, all the Steelers Nation. So regarding that, Aaron Rodgers, he has two options: the Steelers or retirement. How do you feel about this whole Aaron Rodgers debacle? Because there's no decision yet. It seems like his options are limited. Maybe he's still holding out hope for the Vikings. Maybe the Vikings are still opening the door a little bit, keeping that door cracked just a little bit on the Aaron Rodgers potentially going there if they don't think JJ McCarthy is ready enough, being that he was out all his rookie season. What do you feel about this whole Aaron Rodgers situation? Because for me, I'm getting bored of it. I'm getting honestly annoyed that there hasn't been a decision. Maybe I'm impatient. Maybe I'm one of those Steelers fans that just impatient and wants news and wants something to happen now. But I feel like an Aaron Rodgers decision is going to be massive for the Steelers before the draft because let's say this Aaron Rodgers situation falls. Do they take a quarterback?
I mean, I personally am in the field, the sense of mind that Mike Tomlin and the Steelers know what life's going to be with Aaron Rodgers and what life's going to be without Aaron Rodgers. I think the media and by proxy, the fans really have this narrative that like the Steelers are stressed and they need to grab a quarterback and who's going to throw the ball, and the Wambulance police and all the comment sections of every Steelers post and comment, complaining that there's no quarterback. Listen, I could almost bet money that the Steelers feel completely confident rolling with Mason Rudolph all season long if that's what they had to do. I feel completely confident in saying they'd be happy if Aaron Rodgers was the guy going in the entire season. But I don't think they're going to bend or break for one quarterback or the other. I don't think they're really stressed about Aaron Rodgers being there. I mean, they went ahead, they gave Justin, here's the amount of money we want to give you. Oh, you don't want to come back? Whatever. Oh, Aaron Rodgers, here's your amount of money. Oh, you haven't signed yet? Whatever. Russell Wilson, you want to go with the Giants? Cool. Like, I don't think they're stressed. And part of that makes me believe that they do have an idea of a guy they maybe like next year. I mean, the comp pick theory kind of like points to that. But listen, if Aaron Rodgers is going to be the quarterback, whatever. Like, so long as he doesn't cause absolute mayhem in the locker room, he is going to give you better play, in my opinion, than what Russell Wilson did. I think he's got a better arm. I think he's a better processor of the game. He's not going to make as many, silly or haphazard mistakes that Russ did, like hanging onto the football or running into the end zone instead of sliding, going ahead and getting the ball ejected out of your body because you wouldn't go down. He's not going to do stuff like that. So if he's the quarterback, it's whatever. Now, I would like to say this. I don't think that Aaron Rodgers getting a contract takes away the Steelers from drafting one next year. If Aaron Rodgers gets signed, I still think they're going to draft a quarterback for sure in next year's draft, maybe not so likely in this upcoming draft. But that's just kind of some of my thoughts on the matter.
Okay.
If he's the quarterback, I'm still going to watch football. I know some Steeler fans are like, "Well, if he's the quarterback, I'm shutting off the TV all season." Listen, I'm still going to watch. I'm still going to try and have fun. I'm not going to look forward to Aaron Rodgers being on the Pat McAfee show all the time. Maybe Mike Tomlin shuts that down. I don't know. But for now, I'm just enjoying the ride.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That's kind of my approach as well. Is 2025 just one of those years where I don't know what to expect. So I'm going to enjoy whatever can come out of it. Even if Aaron Rodgers is the guy. I preferably don't want Aaron Rodgers to be the guy cuz I don't know what the contract details are going to be, and to me, I think I don't know what Aaron Rodgers could bring to the table that Russ couldn't. I mean, like you said, he's a better processor of the game. He's safe with the football. And last year, maybe the Jets and that whole situation was just a bad situation for Aaron Rodgers, and with the Steelers, it could be better, especially with the weapons like DK and Pickens and then Muth, obviously, and hopefully a new running back and a stronger run game, and maybe the line can finally gel together. We could get something decent going. The thing with Aaron Rodgers, I do want to mention is, yeah, he is a bit of a man child. He does have a bit of a he's kind of has a control freak mentality to him, at least in my opinion. Do you think that could be an issue in the offensive approach if he were to be signed by the Steelers? So, because Russell Wilson and Arthur Smith collided at the end of last year, and I think that kind of shut the door on a Russ return. Do you think Aaron Rodgers could bring that up again, if not worse?
I think that the Steelers are doing a good job in getting Arthur Smith involved in the game plan from the get go. I mean, there were reports that he had a long conversation with the brass, with the Steelers, and one of those was Arthur Smith. So I guarantee you, they're trying to make this work. Everybody's a grown adult in this situation. Like, do what we got to do so that we can win games. And I think that's what Aaron's looking for at the end of his career here, without putting words into his mouth. He's trying to win. He's either going to try to win with the Steelers or retire. It's like the two options you gave. So the thing that worries me necessarily isn't so much what he's going to be doing on the field, it's what's going to be happening off the field that concerns me. It's the Pat McAfee show stuff. It's going to be, the him just wanting to soak up the limelight. That's what I'm more worried about. When it comes to the team, like I've had enough limelight with all of, the hard knocks that we had last year. Like, I never need to see another thing inside the Steelers locker room again. Like, keep the Steelers out of the media's mouth. Like, I just want to watch them on Sundays, Mondays, and Thursdays, and just like not have to worry about, oh, well, Aaron Rodgers is gonna throw George Pickens under the bus because he missed a pass. And I don't want to hear any of that. That's what concerns me.
Yeah, I would agree. Now continuing on with the Aaron Rodgers situation real quick, because I think it still pertains to the quarterback situation. Because I don't know exactly how the Steelers are going to go at the quarterback position in the draft. So this is where I kind of want to get your input. Let's say this is almost a two-part question. Let's say Aaron Rodgers signs with the Steelers. Do you think they could still draft a quarterback, and how high compared to if they don't sign Aaron Rodgers?
That's a great question. And I think it depends on how much they like a guy this year. For example, any quarterback that's going to learn under Aaron Rodgers, if he's like a willing participant to go ahead and coach up these guys, kind of like what we hoped Ben would have done, but didn't really felt like that was his job. If they find a guy who's very raw, like Jalen Milrow, that's a name that we've heard the Steelers kind of, tossing around with, whether it's like a media made up scenario, if the Steelers are actually interested, or even somebody like Jackson Dart. You take somebody like that and you have them learn under the tutelage of Aaron Rodgers. I like that a lot more. It's almost like a bonus. You're getting somebody to start in Aaron Rodgers, and you're also getting kind of this mentor figure. And he would be a fantastic person to learn from. My ideal dream scenario, which is completely like ridiculous and is never going to happen, would be like Arch Manning learning from Aaron Rodgers. I mean, that would be insane. But to answer your question, I do still think they're going to go quarterback in the draft, regardless of what happens with Aaron. If they bring in Aaron, I think you're looking at like a day 3 pick. Maybe if Tyler Shuck or Will Howard is still there, in round 4. If you don't bring in Aaron and it's going to be Mason Rudolph, the Steelers are going to do that thing where it's an open competition and who's got pole position to be quarterback. If that's the scenario, I could see them going quarterback as early as like maybe round 2 if they have to trade back up into it, or round 3. I'm in the field of thought that I don't think they're going to draft a quarterback in round 1. I think there's too many other needs, which we'll talk about. But I do think there's a world in which a round 4 quarterback pick could be a round 2 or round 3 quarterback pick, depending on if Aaron signs or not.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at as well. Is if Aaron Rodgers signs with the Steelers ultimately, I still think they draft somebody because I don't know if they're complacent with Skylar Thompson being the third guy, and you always gotta think who's going to be the future backup down the road because Mason's not going to be here forever. He's not going to be the backup forever. So you got to think of that term. And obviously, if the Rodgers deal falls flat, then you're left with Mason and someone else to kind of compete with him. Who that is, time will tell. But going back to what you said about them potentially trading back, this is where we get into their other needs because they only have 2 picks in the first 2 days because they traded that second round pick for DK. So where could they fit quarterback in that realm if they don't trade back? Which makes me wonder because D line is going to be a top need. We're still going to need another running back to pair with Warren. So in your order, where do you think those positions lie compared to a quarterback?
I think the number one need, like you just said, is defensive line. You cut Larry Ogunjobi, which, regardless of what people thought about his production, he was a starter. He had a certain amount of snaps that he was taking on the field and was relatively, I would say, like average. He was average. He wasn't a superstar, but he also wasn't garbage. So you're going to need somebody to replace that. I don't think the Aquale signing is someone that's going to replace. I don't think Loudermilk coming back in is going to replace. So I think that's number one, especially because, Andy Weidl's coming from this Howie Roseman field of thought where it's like, we got to build through the trenches. So the one thing the Eagles have done the past several seasons in the draft is either build the offensive line or defensive line, which is why they've been so competitive and why they won the Super Bowl. Their defensive line was nasty. So that's number one. Number two from there, for me personally, and it's not just because this is my favorite position and I'm being biased, I still think running back is on the table because I think Jalen Warren is fantastic, but also he has not been healthy a full season yet. I don't think, has the ability to take the amount of production that Najee did. Say whatever you want about Najee. He was rarely ever injured, no drama really, and took a lot of carries. I think he had the most carries like out of like I forget what the statistic is, but like he had a lot of carries, like top in the league with like number of times he was carrying the football. So I think that you're gonna need somebody to replace Najee's level of production and pair him with Warren. I think that Kenny Gainwell, fantastic signing. Love the kid since Memphis. I think that he'll be a great special teamer. I think he's kind of the Cordero Patterson replacement. We just haven't seen Patterson get cut yet. I expect that more towards like training camp or around the draft, perhaps. But I think Kenny Gainwell is going to be a great change of pace back. He's kind of a specialist. He specializes in one specific thing, whereas like Warren's kind of an all around guy, and I think they're going to go draft another all around guy. So that's number two, and then number three, honestly, is just best player available at the highest position of need. So maybe it's a quarterback, maybe it's a wide receiver. Maybe it's another, defensive lineman. They could double dip at defensive line. Maybe it's a guard, a sneaky position that like not a lot of people are talking about, but I'm still not super convinced with what Sam Alu and McCormick did. Now McCormick's younger, so I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. But Sam Alu, his contract's up after this year, so I wouldn't be surprised if somehow another Mason McCormick gets picked in round 4. Another guy like, the kid from West Virginia they brought in for a top 30 visit, like Millam. Like, I would not be surprised if like that sneaky pick comes out. So that's kind of how I break things. It's like defensive line, running back, and then everything else.
See, you and I are on the same wavelength because I'm thinking the exact same thing. And our last two mock drafts have been consistent with that. Defensive line, first pick, and then running back the next, and then it's just kind of whatever after that. It's more like depth or best player available or whatever we think that the Steelers could take in terms of value in that round. Another position I want to bring up real quick. What about safety? Because think of it this way. Deshaun Elliott is in the last year of his contract. I think we all agree he should get resigned. He was a stud last year,
Indeed.
but that's always undetermined. Juan Thornhill's on a 1-year deal, and Minka, his next two cap hits are pretty expensive for his amount of production. I'm not saying they're going to cut him or trade him, but I'm also not going to roll anything out, being that Omar Khan is the general manager. You think safety could be a position they could sneaky take pretty early, maybe late day 2, potentially early day 3, depending on the value or whoever drops?
I think it's definitely a possibility. I wouldn't rule anything out. Like Mike Tomlin says, never say never, but like never underestimate what's going to happen. So they could pick safety. I'm a bit skeptical on if they do that just because they haven't really shown that much interest. I mean, there were some guys they looked at in the combine. I don't believe there's any safeties they've brought in for a top 30 visit yet with, or, at Texas's pro day, I don't think they met with like a Jade Barron. So maybe they go safety, but it would probably be more for like depth in the later rounds. But I wouldn't put it past them whatsoever. And if I do have a moment here to speak on Minka's behalf, and trust me, this is coming from a huge Alabama fan who's been watching Minka since he was playing the star position in college. I think that they're really just playing him out of position. Like, I really do. Like, at first they were having him kind of play that strong safety position when Terrell Edmonds had left and they were having issues with stopping the run. This past season, they had him like 600 yards in the backfield, like doing crochets in the backfield. Like he's playing like a midfielder way back there. So I don't think it's necessarily him. Uh, since I've watched him at Alabama, he's always been a smart, no nonsense, no drama type individual, very high character, very intelligent individual. I just think right now it's kind of how they're scheming him and what they're asking him to do. I think they're just wanting him to be that like ultimate safety net. God forbid anything were to go up and above. But hopefully now with the addition of Thornhill, who can kind of do that, I hope that they keep Elliott closer to the line because he's really good at tackling and kind of blitzing. They keep Minka kind of keeping an eye on the middle of the field, and then keep like I'd rather have Juan Thornhill like way in the back.
Mhm.
Because if anything's going that far back over their head anyways, somebody goofed. So that's just my field of thought.
Yeah, I think Thornhill can play the deep and allows Minka to kind of range around. I think that's necessary, especially with the undetermination of a slot corner being like Beanie Bishop's coming to his second year. Brandon Eccles is a solid depth piece. He'll probably compete with him for that spot. If they add someone else in the draft, maybe he'll be part of that competition. I like to see Minka roam around, so I don't disagree with what you said there for sure. I think Terrell Austin and how he runs the defense is very basic and vanilla. I feel like everyone is just not really being used the way they could, or they're not being floated around in certain areas. Almost like you look at Watt or Highsmith, they're pretty stationary at the edge, and it's easy for teams to chip and game plan against that. And it doesn't help that there's no pressure, and it doesn't help the secondary guys overall. I think a lot of it stumps down to coaching for sure. So I think to recap here, I think we all agree defensive line is a top need, followed by running back, and then that could go anywhere. That can go safety, that can go tackle depth, double dip at D line, which I think is very advised. We did that in our most recent mock. I also don't want to roll out wide receiver because we don't know what the future holds for George Pickens. In fact, they are still very persistent in meeting with some of the top guys. I mean, they were at the Ohio State Pro Day today, and they were very intensely watching Emeka Ibuka. They have talked to Matthew Golden. They've talked to some of the top receivers that could be there in the first round. It's a little less likely now with the DK trade, but I still don't want to rule it out potentially being a pick in the first round. I don't know about you.
No, absolutely. And I would like to point one thing out that's kind of sneaky. It's kind of not a finished product yet, but the Steelers have looked at 15, technically 13 people in the top 30 visits. Two of those were local. But does anybody else find it kind of interesting that everybody they've looked at is in that second round range? Like most of the talent they're looking at right now, at least from the wide receiver position, are looked at as like second round picks, like Noel,
Higgins,
Higgins,
yeah.
potentially how people view Savion Williams. Like those are all kind of like second round wide receivers. So I'm not saying, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm not saying that they're going to trade George Pickens, but I think that they're planning for a world in which if somebody calls them up on draft day and is like, yo, I'll give you a bunch of stuff for this, or if George starts to, go a little crazy and demands a trade or whatever, they're game planning for everything here.
Yeah, I mean, Omar Khan always keeps everything on the table, and the Steelers are no secrets, no, no stranger to telling you what they're really going to do. I mean, they're not going to blatantly tell you what's going to happen, but based on who they've talked to and the recent track record of their most previous, pre-draft visits and their previous draft classes, it seems like that's kind of the pipeline of how they like to bring in guys and see who fits well, who's most familiar, who had a good meeting, this and that, because that really does determine a lot. I mean, that's why we took Broderick over Christian Gonzalez, for example. And that's why a lot of our picks in recent years have been due to, pro days and top 30 visits and things like that. So I just want to mention that because I still don't want to roll out a position like wide receiver. But with that being said, I think we got everything covered here to get into the live mock draft. This should get very interesting, man. So we're gonna do Pro Football Network here. We're gonna use that because it's free, it's pretty reliable, and we think it's very realistic here. So that's kind of what we're gonna be using for this mock draft here. So I'm gonna get this lined up for you, Sentinel. Get that full screen for you. Can you see that, sir?
Absolutely. And look at that beautiful trade that's going on right now. I think y'all should take the first pick here because if we go ahead with this trade like I think we're going to do, I got something fun planned for round 2 here. But take it away, y'all.
Yeah, because you see a trade offer right here. The 21st pick and the 6th round pick that the Seahawks gave us for DK for the 30th pick and the 56th pick, which the Bills can trade because they have a couple picks after that anyway. So they can sacrifice a second round pick if they so desire to trade up, whether that's for whatever position. I'm going to accept this. We're going to do a trade back scenario to make this very interesting. So we're going to accept that. And as we see another trade offer for the Ravens, we're going to not entertain any of these. So you see, Agbuka was just taken by the Commanders. Walter Nolan was taken by the Bengals. Shocker, because they need defensive linemen. You look at what's available. Tyleik Williams. I mean, the Steelers sent the Haas to the Ohio State Pro Day. He's one of the better run defending nose to be selected there. I don't know if he could be a first rounder, potentially a very early day 2 guy, but
Yeah.
I see a Kenneth Grant right there, and we are so incredibly high on a guy like Grant. He's there. I mean, Rob, what's your input, man?
We've been adamant about Grant in the first round within the first 2 mock drafts. I mean, that's very evident, There's also, is Derek Harmon on that board right there?
Derek Harmon. No, he was actually taken. Where was he taken? Let me see if I can get a look here. Derek Harmon was taken by the Vikings.
By the Vikings. I mean,
at
I'm not surprised by that, and that's actually a good fit for Harmon. But I mean, like,
If I may, I mean, I don't want to influence your pick too much here, but if you're interested in someone who's similar to Kenneth Grant, big physical specimen, y'all can go down south to Texas and look at a Mr. Alfred Collins.
yes. I mean, he is a bona fide nose tackle to a T. I mean, if you want a run stuffer right there, a man that's going to fix the run defense day 1, that's Alfred Collins. The guy is a beast there.
He's right here at 72. So if we want to save nose for later, we could, which leaves all the options open here.
Well, in that case, because we were looking at defensive line, do you want to look at running back, Danny?
Well, Omarion Hampton's right there.
That he is. Yes, he is.
I mean, there's not many running backs that I would take in the first round, but I think Genty and Hampton are the only 2. I think that is a very popular opinion. So I don't know. We got some options here, man, and we got to set up Sentinel to give us a good second round pick here, because we have picks 56, 83, and 123 coming up.
Yes, indeed.
For sure. If I may add, who they got starting outside of of Cam Hayward and Keanu Benton?
Nobody.
Nobody, no one can play the nose.
That's right. That's right. No one can play the nose. Yeah, no one can play the nose, and also like not only that, but maybe they want Keanu Benton to play. I don't know. Maybe they want Keanu Benton to play the nose. I don't want him to do that, but so I mean, I think that it's y'all's pick. Defensive line seems pretty darn important. I would be shocked to think that y'all think they would go like maybe round 2 or round 3, or you think they're going to hit that on the head first? Because right now their pro day visits, they haven't. There's rarely any first round picks that they've brought in for a top 30 visit. But I'm thinking like right now they've brought in Yaya Black, that's a late round pick. JJ Pegues, that's like a day 3, day 2 pick.
Yep.
Yeah, there isn't anybody really that they've brought in for a top 30 visit. I guess you'd have to go off of what they've done in the combine or who they've talked to at pro days, etc.
Now, I will mention, I think this was a similar story last year, and they didn't bring some of the top guys in until April and late April, right around the end
Yep.
of the top 30 visits. So
That's right, yeah.
we still got four weeks for them to
Mhm.
bring in some of the top names here. So
And here's the way I see it when it comes to running back and defensive line needs, right? When you look at defensive line outside of Hayward and Benton, like Sentinel just stated, there's not really anybody that
Nothing.
could really fill at the moment. Warren technically can fill that position at least early
Oh,
into the
100%.
season. He can fill that
100%.
role. So running back isn't a dire need. I would say defensive line for sure is.
okay, well, Rob, I will put the fate of the the 30th pick in your hands. We got Tyleek, we got Kenneth Grant. I mean, those are really the only two that they should go at that
Yeah, I mean,
juncture.
and listen, I like Tyleek Williams. I think he's a dog. He's another good run stuffer right there. You know, he's a very good player. But I think I'm gonna go with the hat trick on this one, and I'm gonna go with Kenneth Grant out of Michigan.
You can tell we definitely have our favorites this
Hey
year.
yo.
So we're gonna go Kenneth Grant at pick. I'm sorry. Listen, if they trade back and he's still there, I don't know how they don't take him. So we're gonna go Kenneth
Yeah, I
Grant.
mean, he's a absolute monster, and I mean, it just feels like the most Mike Tomlin thing. They love their Michigan guys. It would be like the most Mike Tomlin thing ever to go ahead and take him there. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. We got two trade offers for you. I don't know if you want to trade back from any of these selections.
Absolutely not. I have my heart set on one individual if he's still there. Can you show me? Can you show me the running backs on the board, please?
Oh, you thinking who I think you're thinking? Because I think we've kind of been on the
Okay.
same thinking planet all podcast. So where are you gonna go here,
Yep.
sir?
So, the day we're recording this, the Steelers were at the Ohio State Pro Day, and it
Mhm.
was reported that there were 3 individuals that the Steelers met with pre-Pro Day: a Mr. Will Howard, a Mr. Quinshaw Judkins, and a Mr. Travion Henderson. For those watching this show right now, you can see that those first 2 running backs up on the board right now are the 2 that I just mentioned previously. And there's one individual that apparently, you can read into it if you want, Mike Tomlin was very enamored and paying a lot of attention towards. I'm going to pick a Travion Henderson, and I'm going to tell y'all why. Talk about a guy that is like the opposite of Jalen Warren. He's fast, he's a home run hitter. There are some people that are kind of concerned about his wear and tear and his injuries in college, but you're not really asking him to be the premier guy. He could, in case of injury, step in and be the number one, but he'd be the perfect complement. He's the thing they don't really have on the team right now, which is a big home run hitter at running back. Jalen Warren can kind of be that grinded out guy like he was towards the end of the season when you saw Najee Harris not really being the guy anymore. And now you can have Travion Henderson kind of be like that switch it up, that up pace back who would be perfect for a wide zone concept. Not to mention, he has a very similar build to Jameer Gibbs. I believe, if I'm correct here, Travion Henderson is about 5'10 and about 208 pounds. So that's fantastic size. He's fast as all get out. Super, super fast. Don't let what happened at the combine make you think that he's slow. A 4.4 is not slow. And the thing about his game that is very enticing is he can accelerate incredibly, incredibly quickly. He hits that hole and ain't nobody catching him. Somebody will come and catch Jalen Warren. We've seen it. He doesn't have the breakaway speed to just leave people in the dust. Kenny Gainwell's good, but he doesn't have the breakaway speed to leave people in the dust. Travion Henderson will make you eat his tracks. He's gone. So that's who I'm picking in the second round. My boy, Henzone.
I agree. And here's the thing, man. Very much like the Buckeyes running back tandem, he's going to have that same thing in Pittsburgh, which is going to take some wear and tear off him for those with injury concerns. I mean, this is a do it all running back. He's great in pass pro. He's a receiving guy. He's got that long speed. I mean, he's everything that the Steelers are looking for. Plus, he kind of has that Steelers running back size based on their tradition.
Yep.
And you just match that long speed. I mean, this is a no-brainer. We're gonna go
Absolutely.
We're gonna go Henderson right here, man.
I would have picked. I'm okay with Quinshaw Judkins too. I think he's another fantastic prospect. The only thing that makes me lean Henderson over Judkins is you kind of have a Judkins type player in Jalen Warren. I think Judkins is a better prospect than Jalen Warren, but they bring you similar things to the table. They're both kind of that squatty, very strong, athletic build who will bulldoze people over. So I don't think you need to load up on two of that type of player. I'd rather go with somebody that's a little bit different.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I see the similarities between Junkins and Warren, like you mentioned there. But Henderson, to be paired in a running back tandem, he's, in my opinion, is the better back of the Ohio State Buckeyes. Some people may disagree on that. Some people may prefer Junkins, and that's fine. Both backs are very good. Both backs are very talented. I just find Henderson to be more of a do-it-all type of back. And considering what he did at Ohio State in a running back tandem, and you put him in with Pittsburgh with a similar style and what Arthur Smith's trying to go for, that's a perfect fit for the Steelers and for Henderson right there. It's like a perfect puzzle piece right there.
This is
Oh my
low.
gosh.
This is low key exactly what I'm hoping happens for the Steelers is that they trade back, get a top defensive line early, and still get one of the Buckeyes backs in round two. This is low key what I really want them to do, man. I've kind of fantasized about this ever since we traded for DK. So to do this in this mock is actually bringing a smile to my face. The 83rd pick. Let's see what we got here, man. Because again, we addressed D-line, we addressed running back. This can go anywhere. This can go anywhere.
I see the first name on the top of that list right there. If somehow he falls, by some miracle he falls, I don't see how the Steelers don't pick him. I'm just going to throw it out there right now.
There's Jaden Higgins in round 3. That's incredible value, and we don't know the future for George Pickens. Now, I will mention Darius Alexander's there. I see a lot of to it in him. Obviously, his biggest concern is his age and if he's going to be a one-contract guy.
I know you're very picky about, old rookies about that. I get your standpoint on that, but I think when it comes to defensive line, that's not really a worrisome thing, at least in my opinion. With certain positions, like maybe quarterback, cornerback, something like that, or even running back, I can understand that. I really could.
Sure.
Defensive line is one of those positions that, in my opinion, is something when it comes to age, it's not really a big concern because defensive linemen can play for 10 plus years and whatnot.
For sure. But I don't want to just stare down at Jaden Higgins because, I mean, we still got – so we got some tackle here. We got Quinn Ewers, who I'm not the biggest fan of. Will Howard's here if they want to take him at the end of day 2. They could do that. I mean, we put him in the 4th round of our latest mock. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised at all if the Steelers take him in round 3 if they do trade back just to secure the guy.
Right.
So, I mean, we got options here. I want to look at safety. There's Ransom from Ohio State. I mean, of course, they sent the Haas to the Ohio State Pro Day. So, I mean, there's a lot of talent coming out of that school this year.
And while you're thinking and mulling this over here, just RIP to Xavier Restrepo running like a 4.89 or something like that. His stuff.
Is that what he ran?
Yes.
Yeah, he ran like a 4.8 or 9. So he's still going to be in the NFL, but he probably cost himself a day 2 pick. He's probably going to be in that 3rd round now, which good for a team that picks him up. You're still getting a really good, talented guy. Just low slower than a lot of us thought.
Yeah, I did not expect that. I mean, he's a talented receiver. He's a bona fide slot guy. He was Cam Ward's favorite target. It's just the speed is definitely a huge killer.
Yeah, he was never the fastest on tape for sure.
But I thought he was faster than that.
Yeah, for sure.
Eesh.
But see, that's why I like a guy like Jaden Higgins because he does have that blaring speed. He has a big body frame to him. He's very athletic for his size. He's a solid route runner that can create separation pretty easily. His hands are very good, low drop rate. and he stood out big time for Ohio State, or I'm sorry,
Iowa
Iowa
State.
State last year.
And I think I said this in the pre-free agency mock draft when we took him in the second round before we traded away for DK, obviously. His play style and just his tangibles kind of reminds me, it's reminiscent of a Nico Collins. And if you were able to get
Yeah.
a Nico Collins-esque player like that, I mean, you got yourself a dog at wide receiver.
Also kind of gives me some Michael Pittman vibes.
A little bit, yeah.
That's another good one.
And the crazy thing is Higgins, if you want to put him as a power slot, I mean,
Mismatch.
you're talking Pickens, maybe. Maybe Pickens. I don't know, depending on the selection here. But let's say Pickens sticks around. Pickens, DK, and Higgins.
That's size, speed, just ruthless aggression right there. That's dominance right there.
If Aaron Rodgers does retire, I think the selection of Higgins might force him out of retirement. I don't know.
And Jaden Higgins could also give Aaron a little bit of flashbacks to oh gosh, his name's skipping my mind. Who's the really tall guy that was with the Packers, then went to the Jets to follow Aaron Rodgers?
Alan Lazard, is that who you're thinking?
Yes. Very Lazard-esque. He's got that same body and same frame.
Yeah, just faster, and I feel like I think he's gonna be a better receiver than Lazard in the NFL for sure. Yeah, we're gonna go Higgins here. Him at 63. I mean, that's a steal. And we mentioned D line, running back, and anything after that is just BPA or whatever's on the board. So we're gonna go Jaden Higgins here for wide receiver because I still don't want to roll it out. And they did bring him in for a top 30 visit. So
That they did.
everything's lining up here, man. I'm loving this mock so far. Now we got the 4th round pick, the 123rd pick. Oh my
Okay.
God.
All right. Well, Sentinel, take it from here.
Alrighty, so we got options. Can you show me the quarterbacks on the board right now?
I sure can. And the guy we discussed in the last one at 83
Mhm.
is still there.
That's true.
We took his running back in the second.
And the
That's
Steelers
true.
love to double dip. I will just mention that.
They do. Can you show me the defensive tackles on the board as well?
Yes, sir. Ooh.
Mhm. So some names that are popping out to me, some guys that I know are like round 4 talent that are there. Jamari Caldwell is very interesting. I know they didn't really do anything with Oregon's pro day, but I know that's a pretty interesting guy right there. JJ Pegues, interesting. He played fullback
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, as well as that's a big fullback. Lord have mercy.
7 touchdowns last year, I think, something like that.
Yeah. And really helped contribute to a very stout Ole Miss defense. Both Nolan and Pegues there. So that would be interesting. I think the defensive line room would, especially with Grant, would be a bit crowded if you throw Pegues in there. Even though I think Pegues could beat out a Logan Lee or could beat out an Isaiah Loudermilk. But I think I'm actually going to go quarterback here because this is under the pretense or assuming that Aaron Rodgers does in fact get signed. I could see this pick happening here even if Aaron Rodgers doesn't get signed. If Will Howard's still there in the 4th round, I would be over the moon because I see somebody who's kind of like the great value version of Josh Allen. He's got the size. He maybe doesn't have as big of an arm as Josh Allen, but it's more than adequate. And the thing about Will Howard that I personally really have enjoyed learning more about is how much of a processor of the game he is.
Mhm.
I think that's the thing that separates somebody from Mason Rudolph from Will Howard. They're very similar type players. They have the build, they have the arm, but I think Mason Rudolph's pocket presence and just his overall ability to understand the game early on in his career just wasn't there the way the Steelers maybe hoped it would be, especially with him sitting behind Ben Roethlisberger and stuff like that. So I really do think that my pick here will be Will Howard. He's smart. He's somebody who's used to playing in that cold Ohio State weather, so he'll be good playing against the Browns and the Bengals twice a year. He's someone who can compete against Mason Rudolph for the starting job this year. He could learn from Aaron Rodgers, or he could try and compete against the quarterback that they draft next year. So I'm going to go Will Howard here.
Yeah, I love this. And I gotta say about Will Howard is you're right. He is a processor of the game. One thing I like about him is he doesn't stare down receivers, so he's constantly looking at reads. And
Mhm.
I know everyone
Yeah.
says he had the best surround system with the Buckeyes, and Sure, he did. I mean, he had literally the best team in the entire college system.
What you want from your quarterback, like you want to surround him with as many pieces as possible. I mean, whatever quarterback's going to be coming in for the Steelers is going to be thrown to DK and or George Pickens, plus Pat Fryermuth. The offensive line's a little questionable, but he's going to have weapons. So like,
Hmm.
you'd want that. I would want my quarterback who's surrounded by 5 stars to look amazing.
And it's not just that, but the way he improved and provided in the playoffs, man. I mean, wasn't he the college football championship MVP?
Yes, he was.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
I mean, you cannot take anything away from Will Howard. And the guy's a competitor. He transferred from Kansas State to Ohio State, and he wanted to prove to everybody that he could step up in the big leagues at the college level. The guy's a competitor, knows how to process the defense, and even for his size, he's not afraid to run the football. He's a
Yeah,
very
and
underrated scrambler.
of course. And, I believe, I forget if it was Mr. Rooney or somebody in the front office said that they want to bring in quarterbacks of similar kind of build and stature and play style. Him and Mason Rudolph, I mean, he's way more athletic, I think, than Mason Rudolph, but just pure build wise, they're very similar.
he's just a Steelers quarterback. That's all I'm gonna put. So we're gonna select him. I can't believe he was there at 123, man. This mock is looking golden, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah.
Now we got pick 156. Now, obviously, we traded 185 to acquire an extra second round pick. We took that for Henderson from the Bills. We could do a trade back. We don't have any proposals. We could always entertain the idea of trading back to gain more picks because I think that could be a situation the Steelers could look into for sure.
Well, let's look at the draft board right here. I mean, I see a Malachi Moore right there.
Love him out of Alabama. He's got that leadership.
Oh, yeah.
I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
you know all about Malachi.
I like Malachi Moore, and he's got a little bit of a mouth on him. He got a little bit of edge to him. What's edge look like?
Came on Rucker, Ja Joyner, Queer Robinson.
It's interesting. Elijah Roberts, someone that I think they just brought in for a top 30 visit. He's probably going to be an edge or a outside kind of linebacker edge person at the next level. That's interesting. The kid from SMU. He's listed in the defensive tackle category, but he's not really defensive tackle.
No, he can play the edge for sure. I
Yeah.
mean, he's right there at 159, and technically that could be double dipping at defensive line if they so
Yeah.
desire to. I like Anais Peebles. I think he's another big body. I love Ty
Oh, yeah.
Robinson.
hmm
Call me crazy. I see a little bit of Kiesel in Ty Robinson.
I
Um,
like Ty Robinson. He's nice.
I really do.
Just a bully play style he brings.
I mean, he's so quick off the snap too. I mean, he's versatile.
I mean, and here's the thing, everything outside of like the first 2 days, like round 4 through round 7's really just like picking the guys they like. Like they picked Mason because they liked him. They liked Mason McCormick. They picked Ryan Watts and Logan Lee because they liked those guys, So at this point, I think you should just pick who you like. And if that's Ty Robinson right there, it might seem like a reach to somebody, but if the Steelers really like him, they'll take him.
Yeah, I agree. I keep hearing Robinson might get some day 2 looks, honestly. I mean, he impressed a lot at the combine, and his film shows it for sure.
I mean, dude, he's a freak athlete. A guy of that size and get that caliber, so versatile, so quick and strong, and again, a bully on the tree. He's meant for the trenches, dude.
Sure is. It's funny enough, we might be copying some of the picks from our previous mock, but I don't think that's a bad thing here. I'm gonna go Ty Robinson, honestly. And I'll save the last pick for you for 229 and see what we can go there. So
Boy, oh boy, a 7th rounder. What am I going to strike?
early. So we're gonna go with Ty Robinson.
Yeah, I agree with
There we
that big
go.
time.
229's all up to you, man. That could go safety, that could go corner.
Ooh.
You can go I don't know, receiver. You can go punter. You can go fullback.
Now we don't need a punter for once.
Well, we also need a fullback, and we don't have a fullback. So
Yeah.
Devin Neal is all the way down here. Wow.
That's so weird. He's so much better. Even LaQuint Allen is, oh my gosh, the running
Yeah.
back class is just LaQuint Allen's fantastic.
Mhm.
I just don't think I would listen. I want 20 running backs on the team. I don't. Can you show me the wide receivers?
Oh,
Fourth
double
and
double.
fourth.
Jimmy
receiver.
Horn. Jimmy Horn and Webster. You want some speedsters?
Jimmy Horn just feels like a Mike Tomlin pick, especially because I believe he does play special teams. I could see him as kind of we need to do something on the kick return. My goodness, I could run faster than Cordell Patterson. No offense, but like, holy smokes. Um,
Yeah, I don't know if that's Gainwell's job. Maybe Calvin Austin. You also got to think Calvin Austin's coming into his final year, and Horn is like an Austin type of guy in terms of similar
that's very
size.
true.
Yeah, yeah.
And you know what? I mean, at this point, the way many people say the seventh round should be looked at is guys that you don't want to have to fight for as an undrafted free agent. And I do not want to have to fight for Jimmy Horn as an undrafted free agent because I think he could be a hidden gem that's kind of worked into rotation, kind of a sneaky guy that makes the roster. So I'm pick Jimmy Horn.
I love that. I think Jimmy
Booyah.
Horn, late is going to be one of those secret gadget guys for any team in the NFL for
What a
sure.
haul.
Look at
What
that.
a
Wow.
Look at
haul.
that mock, dude.
Wow. I'm going to screen save this.
Save
Wow.
it. Save it.
That's fantastic.
I'm going to download that for
Can the
sure.
universe hear us? Can you make this happen? Can
Hey,
this be-
Omar, I don't know if you listen to podcasts or the fan base, but someone get his email or something and ship this out to him. Kenneth Grant. So Steelers trade back from 21 with the Bills. They trade the 21st pick and the 185th pick for pick 30 and pick 56. The 30th pick, they go Kenneth Grant, 56. Sentinel took Henderson. We took Higgins in the 3rd round. Sentinel took Howard in the 4th. We took Ty Robinson to double dip at D-line. I think that is almost a mandatory thing for the Steelers to do. And in the 7th round, just to see what else we could fill. We double dip with wide receiver because you can never have too many good wide receivers.
Absolutely. And he's kind of a special teams ace that, Danny Smith, Bubblegum Boy, is gonna
Mhm.
love.
But yeah, I'm loving that haul. I will mention we didn't go defensive back. We didn't go safety. We didn't go corner.
It's true.
It's one of those tricky positions. I don't know if they do take it. I don't want to rule it out, but I feel like that's on the back burner now.
Yeah, I mean they brought in Eccles, they brought in Thornhill, they brought in Slay. They, still believe in Trice, they still believe in Bishop. There's Ryan Watts from last year that we didn't really get to see because he injured himself and was out, for the entire season. So that's another person. You still have Killebrew, you still have Elliott. I don't know. To me, the Steelers they've never really done well at drafting corner. Joey Porter Jr. is just kind of like the enigma because he's a homer. He's Joey's Porter's son. So,
Mhm.
I think it makes complete sense that they're not really going to look at cornerback. Maybe as an undrafted free agent for sure. I just think that they're not a team that really prioritizes like a bunch of secondary players. They're more of like a traditional front seven, like the Rams, the Steelers, the Saints, the Eagles, the Ravens. They like really focus on the front seven.
Yeah, that you notice with Omar Khan and especially Andy Weidel and his mentality he brought over from Philly. They're all about fixing the trenches, and I think that's going to remain consistent. So pretty much Omar Khan in his first 3 years as GM, I think signs point to him going trenches in every single year, and I can't really fault him for it because without the trenches, you have nothing. And as Steelers fans, we can unfortunately say that because we've seen the trenches be so rough for so many years now. So we'll see if that continues on, but I think that's going to be the continued trend. And I don't know, depending on what other picks they do or if they trade back and acquire other picks, which I think is very ideal. Omar Khan's no stranger to trading up or trading back. I mean, he did it in his first draft alone when he traded up for Project and he traded back in the 3rd round with the Panthers and still got Darnell Washington.
Yep.
So he's going to keep everything on the table for sure. I mean, it's going to be one of those interesting situations that will happen in 4 weeks' time, man. We are 4 weeks away from finding out who the next group of Pittsburgh Steelers are going to be, man. I'm very excited.
That's crazy. It's crazy. And honestly, it's just weird to think that it's kind of exciting, but also annoying that we're going to get a whole new batch of quarterbacks. Like we had the Kenny Pickett batch, which was a real stinker. Then we had like this weird Fields Wilson experiment. Now it's like a Mason Rudolph's back again. Like maybe somebody new next year. So like we're kept on our toes here with all these different quarterback combos.
It's trial and error, pretty much. I mean, I guess this is what life is after a Hall of Fame quarterback. I mean, this is new to us personally. I mean, this is just what we got to go through. So
if you ain't winning, you're losing. So if they're not striking gold with the quarterback, there's no point in like sticking onto a guy for 4 or 5 years. I'm glad they kind of let Kenny go when they did. It just wasn't working. So instead of wasting more time, just try to go back into it and see if you can strike gold.
Absolutely, and I think that's going to be their mission statement for this draft. Is I mean, they're going to keep quarterback an open mind for sure. I think the likely situation is they'll take one in round 3 or 4, somewhere day 3 potentially. But I mean, it seems like signs are pointing to them building everything around so they can do what they got to do in 2026, especially with that comp pick formula theory that everyone's throwing around. It seems like the writing is on the wall 1 year in advance, especially with it being in Pittsburgh in 1 year's time. So again, the draft is 4 weeks away. We'll see what the Steelers do. I'll be very interested in the next couple weeks to see what pro days they continue to attend, who they bring in for top 30 visits, because that seems
That's
to be
huge.
that almost seems to be like the final check on the checklist is if they bring in said guy for top 30 visit, okay, they're probably going to select him if he's there in the first round. I mean, we've seen
Yeah.
that many years now. I think Fatanu was the only exception. That's only because the Steelers don't go out west very often. But I'll be very interested to look at who they bring in. I would imagine some of those will be the top defensive linemen. Maybe they'll bring in some of the extra receivers, maybe
Yeah.
even quarterback. I don't know.
Yeah, they always the two biggest things to always look out for, and we know this. This is mainly just for the listeners or the viewers watching this. Who they bring in for those top 30 visits is huge, and who they either take out to dinners slash talk to on the pro days. Those private meetings, those are a real key indication of who they're heavily leaning in. You only have 30 people you can bring in. You're not going to bring in somebody you don't really care about. And the Steelers pretty much always in the past 4 to 5 years bring in somebody from that top 30 list. There's always at least one or two people that get drafted from that 30s list. So you see there's people's names on the top 30 list that usually means something important.
Absolutely. So that's really what we can say to keep a very close eye on as we're pretty much in the dead period of the offseason up until the draft. That's all that's really going to be us to look forward to outside of the Aaron Rodgers decision, which may come before the draft, may come after the draft. Nobody's knows this at this point. It's just one of those situations where we'll hear it when it's announced. So it's just
Yeah.
riding on that train until something finally happens. But up
Yeah.
until then, man, Sentinel, always glad to have you on. It's always great to talk, draft talk with you, share mock drafts. And that haul we had, man, listen, I got to go back and look at what we did the past couple 6 years. But that might be one of the best we've done ever since we started collabing, man.
Yeah. They're getting better with age, like fine wine or like a good piece of cheese.
Yeah, man. Is there anything
Mm.
else you want to say before we get on out here? Where can they find you for your Black and Bold podcast?
Yeah, so you can find me on whatever you listen to your podcasts on, Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, whatever that is. Shows air on Saturdays with the Steel Curtain Network. We also have a website that we have our articles that we, have on there regularly throughout the off season. And shameless little plug here, Twins are going to be on the show next week. So we're going to invite you on. It's going to be a blast. So you got to come see. Are we going to get as lucky? Probably not as how we did tonight. So it'll be good. We have some fun goodies planned for the future.
Yes, more collabs will be coming. So if you guys want to listen to more of Steel Sentinel, aka Philly G of the Black and Bold podcast, the link to that will be down in the description box below. I highly encourage you guys to go have a listen, to go follow for sure. Huge shout out to Sentinel as always for bringing us on. Can't wait for the collabs for the next couple weeks as the draft comes around. So up until then, man, we'll talk soon.
Absolutely. Y'all have a great night. And again, thanks for having me on the show. Here's to the past 6 years, and here's to 60 more.
Absolutely, I love it, man. Rob, send us out.
And as always, like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you later.
Peace.